Well, good morning. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Linda, for being on the fly. You are awesome. So the title of my talk today is Name Your Poison. And I'm just going to read my little pitch, my little marketing pitch for it. So we all have a go-to. And here's the funny thing too, is that I'm trying to wean myself off of completely relying on this and it fail. It's an epic. I'm just going to read because I thought I'll just do bullet points. So I have like 6 pages of bullet points. So I'm just going to read it. We all have a go-to substance, behavior, or habit that we turn to that gets us into trouble. In recovery, we're encouraged to name that poison as a way to let go of shame and start healing from the pain of addiction. So whether you identify as a normie or someone in recovery, there's something to be said for actively working with our kleshas in a structured format. With 3 groups now meeting weekly, the recovery model is a practical and powerful way to begin working the Dharma, integrating Buddhist principles and practices and the 12 steps of liberation into our daily lives. Recovery is Dharma in action and uniquely Vajrayana. So my goal today is to spend some time talking about our groups, what they are and why they're important, and how they offer this working model with this model of working with the Dharma that everyone can find useful. I hope to show you how much of our practice is the same, or at least similar, in the hopes that we can be less separate and be of benefit to one another. In recovery meetings, we often talk up the opportunities to engage more deeply with Buddhism, whether it's attending Rinpoche's talks, enjoying sound healing with Sue, learning how to meditate at any one of our non-recovery groups, or taking the next step with entering the path. It's my sincere hope that after today, some of you may talk about our recovery program with more confidence and understanding. And most of all, I hope that many of you will join us to share in a safe space your own experience, strength, and hope in dealing with your kleshas. For today's talk, I rely heavily on a series of interviews with Lama Jinpa Rinpoche on the topic of recovery that he is compiling into a book. I've also referred to Refuge Recovery, Recovery Dharma, the Way to Shambhala, and my own experience in recovery. And of course, as if it isn't obvious, I'm just a beginner on this path, and so any stupid shit you hear falling out of my mouth and causing consternation is wholly my own, and you can trust me on that. So, it gets easier, but never that much easier. What happens in the dojo stays in the dojo. But what actually is going on in the dojo? As I said, we've got 3 recovery groups in progress, and these groups help people seeking to recover from a range of addictive behaviors. We have a Friday night group and a Sunday morning group, and they are more traditional check-in style meetings where people share their experience, strength, and hope. And to this mix, we've added a Wednesday night group that's an hour and a half, and it's a combination of meditation, step work, and sharing that's centered on one of the 12 steps of liberation. And every month we practice a different meditation technique and go deep on one of the steps to see how it's working in our lives. So we'll spend 4 weeks doing, say, a body scan and looking at step 0, which is actually a little-known step, but pretty cool. So what's unique about our mindful recovery and healing group is that we recognize that all addictions are really of one taste. They're the same, rooted in a craving that robs us of freedom. Some of you who are in recovery will be familiar with this language. No matter what form our particular brand of attachment takes, and there are many, alcohol, food, sex, weed, gambling, you name it, the end result is the same, suffering for ourselves and for others. We take the Buddhist teachings on the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path as our inspiration for the steps to recovery and liberation. What's also unique is that we're open to everyone suffering from addictive behaviors. While many in our community identify as having substance use issues and codependency, we also have people who are seeking healing from perfectionism, people-pleasing, negative self-talk, anxiety, and depression. We also have some people who are addicted to peak experiences or processes that are mood altering, distracting, and potentially harmful, whether that's shopping, exercise, or surfing the internet. Earlier this month, our group set a record with 44 people in attendance on a Sunday, which was pretty fantastic. Yeah. So there's a need, right? And we're doing something really different in the community and powerful. Our recovery group doesn't compete with AA, but is complementary to it. So we draw people from both AA and recovery Dharma. And we offer a safe space. And for many, it's a moment, it's a calm moment in the storm of their lives. A place to go where you know that you're accepted, loved, and that it's okay to not be okay. And we offer a structured format, and we speak in the first person, just in case you haven't attended. And you go in and you're like, how does this go? Because it can be kind of awkward because it's my first meeting and maybe they want to give advice. So we have to kind of set some ground rules. Anyway, we speak in the first person. There's no crosstalk. We don't give advice unless asked afterwards. There's no shit talking other people or programs. It slips out sometimes, but pretty much we're mindful of that. We don't talk about people's stories outside of the dojo. So we maintain anonymity and safety for people. And the program's led by members of the community who have at least a year of sobriety, whatever that was, right? Abstaining from your addiction. Recovery as entrance to the mandala. So most of us here today understand that we're part of a mandala, and we see them represented around us, like this medicine Buddha mandala and the Kala Chakra mandala at the back. A mandala is a mystic circle enclosing a jeweled palace with gates or doors that allow us to enter the palace. And recovery is one way of entering our mandala, and something Dharma practitioners and people in recovery share in common. So I'm going to talk a lot about where we overlap, what we're doing here, what we do in the dojo, and the commonalities. These gates represent spiritual entrances as well as returns to the world, reflecting qualities for practice and the physical entrances to sacred spaces and cognitive experiences. It's a representation of the outer world and our inner psychic universe, and a path to an exalted state, to the inherent Buddhahood that sleeps within each of us. And this is from the Shambhala journey, what I just said. Rinpoche speaks of the Shambhala journey, or the hero's journey. And to begin the mystical journey of transformation, we leave samsara, passing through a flaming barrier to enter the sacred mandala. And the flames are cleansing or burning away our ignorance. In Kala Chakra, the initiate is blindfolded and led into the mandala through the eastern entrance, representing birth and new beginnings, childlike wonder. In the Way to Shambhala, Edwin Birnbaum describes the process we yogis both visualize and encounter the mandala. It's through the mandala the yogi strives to see this world as nirvana, to hear all sounds as mantras, and to regard all beings as Buddhas. Just as the deities of the mandala manifest the nature of the central tutelary deity, so the yogi begins to see that other people reflect various aspects of himself or herself, and that through them, he or she can discern hidden parts of his or her mind that need to awaken. Everyone, each in their own way, can teach the yogi something of great value. As this awareness deepens, we cease to regard ourselves as an isolated entity set apart from the rest of existence. Rinpoche says that sharing our journeys and vulnerabilities is important because addiction is marked by an intense feeling of separateness and aloneness, which is a basic mistake of the misperceived self. So coming together with others in this recovery group, it's the power of the Sangha and the recovery community. What we do here together today is very much what we're doing in the dojo. And when we connect and when we share our stories, we hold up a mirror for others. We listen, we recognize our own humanity, the beauty, the pain, and the other. And this process moves us incrementally closer to the truth of who we are. Nothing is superfluous. Everything is linked, connected, and in relationship. So as a result of this practice, the yogi discovers that everything wished for can be found within. There's no need to grab and clutch at things outside of oneself, thereby perpetuating attachments that blind us to suffering, to craving, addiction. As our understanding deepens through meditation, we come to realize that no matter where we go, like the central deity, we're always in the same place, at the center of the world around us. When we return to ordinary life, we retain that view. This understanding provides inner balance and stability that enables us to withstand and make use of the forces of passion and circumstance that used to knock us off balance. So connecting with our sacred nature, when we're in union with compassion and wisdom, things that felt solid and real, things like time, the things of this world, ourselves, we realize these are momentary. The experience of things good and bad come and go, but what remains is sacred awareness, luminous, clear, energetic, and part of the ever-present now. This model of the mandala here and also in recovery is uniquely Vajrayana. In Vajrayana Buddhism, the concept of poison as medicine refers to the practice of transforming negative emotions and experiences like anger, jealousy, and delusion into wisdom and compassion, rather than trying to suppress or eliminate them. It's about recognizing that these so-called poisons are inherent aspects of our being and can, when understood and worked with skillfully, be pathways to enlightenment. You don't have to choose sides. Rinpoche says, everybody here is doing the same practice. Yet for many in the Sangha, there's been a kind of self-selection around the recovery group. A lot of people have opted out of any of the meetings, and some come and observe, which is fine, but often without participating. So I would, if you do come and visit, I would gently challenge you, if you're remaining silent, what's behind that? What's the fear? What's holding you back? This division between the gompa and the dojo kind of reminds me of a classroom. You remember back in school, some of the students sat at the front of the class with their trapper keepers and their little, the pens and stuff in a nice little canvas bag, very tidy. And then there's that other group that sits in the back of the class, and they're the misfits, the breakfast club bunch. Misfits, they're vaping outside the door. So sort of the front of the class and the back of the class. And so of course I'm having fun and exaggerating these divisions, but honestly, I have heard when people say things like, well, I don't have those kinds of problems. Or maybe people feel like they can't relate, or that things aren't really that bad for them. And that's probably true. And I'm not here to tell you that you should go to a recovery meeting or that all of our issues are exactly the same, because they're not. But the difference with recovery and with addictive behaviors is more a matter of degree. The basic behaviors, the basic cravings are the same, but the degree is different. In Buddhism, we understand that we're living in the desire realm. No matter what side of the house you sit on, until we reach the point of awakening, we're struggling with our cravings, defined as the powerful, sometimes blinding desire to change our thoughts, feelings, and circumstances. We have a powerful attachment to pleasure and an aversion to pain, and the rest we ignore. It's like it's not, we don't even see it. Noah Levine founder of Refuge Recovery, defines addiction as the repetitive process of habitually satisfying cravings to avoid change or control the seemingly unbearable conditions of the present moment. Lama Jinpa elaborates on this a bit, saying, addiction is a desire for impossible things. I love this. An impossible thing, he says, is thinking that that thing, whether it's the first drink or a snort or a skydive or a purchase, whatever it is going to feel as good as the second one, right? That first drink is never as good as the second one. I know this. I'm a professional. And sometimes we get what we want, but it sets up another impossibility, and that's thinking that it will last. And he says, how can you say that something that doesn't last actually brings happiness or lasting satisfaction? He says that we should have a desire for possible things that lead to liberation. And Buddhists do like permanence, he said, just of the right things. And that's a very short list, by the way. I had to look it up. I think it's like cessation of suffering, emptiness, and our Buddha nature, and maybe space and time. That's it. I'm certain that all of this sounds familiar. All of the masters talk about chasing pleasure and running away from fear and being swept up in negative thoughts and behaviors. Of course, for the addict, craving crosses a line into compulsion and ongoing suffering. And we can take the rafters down. We fall through the floors until we hit the bottom. And some don't hit bottom. Recovery then is the process of healing the underlying conditions that lead to addiction. It's establishing and maintaining the practice of abstaining from satisfying the cravings for the substances and behaviors that we've become addicted to, and to inhabit the conditions of the present reality, no matter what that looks like. If you think about it, aren't we all trying to overcome the pain of our three root poisons: attachment, aversion, and ignorance? Would it be going too far to say we're all in recovery from samsara? Yeah. For Dharma practitioners who have taken refuge vows, here's another thing we share in common: renunciation, the practice of abstaining from harmful behaviors. We think of the 5 precepts: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and intoxicants. Living ethically is encouraged both as a way to be of benefit to all sentient beings and also as an important pathway to cultivating a mind that's free from suffering and delusions. The precepts support us as we advance on that path to awakening. Though again, at least as far as the 5th precept is concerned, it may be open to some interpretation, more for some than for others of us. Some of us, we just have to have a hard line. Recovery is working Dharma. But one of the key benefits of recovery lies in its specificity, the very thing that makes it so uncomfortable. Rinpoche says that what's different about many trainings versus recovery is that recovery is specific. We pinpoint the problem. In our shares, we identify the craving or addiction that's been running us. In Dharma trainings, on the other hand, they're more global or general because they're archetypal, he says, and they have to be activated by the specific things that are creating our craziness. He says mindfully washing the dishes is not the same as actually connecting with our kleshas and addictions. The work we do in recovery, sharing our stories, meditating, working through the steps, learning how to spot cravings and habitual behaviors as they arise, and applying antidotes, being accountable to ourselves and to others, offers a real living Dharma workbook that benefits all Dharma practitioners. But it isn't easy, and it takes courage. It means being accountable and exposed in a group. This is a short talk today. Lucky you. I'll wind this down by reminding us all of our similarities. We didn't end up in these seats by accident because we missed the turn to Fremont Presbyterian. something out there wasn't working for us, and something inside here isn't satisfied and craves something different. Our desires might be different by degree or specificity, but underneath it all, the root of all of our problems on both sides of this magnificent house is our clinging to a misperceived self. And in order to correct and heal that, we need each other. And the recovery model is a kind of Rosetta Stone that gives us a language to begin working with each other and with the Dharma. So I hope to see you in the dojo soon.
Questions, comments?
Thank you, Jen. Really appreciate your talk and how succinct and direct it is. I'm a huge fan of recovery and know that it's changed my life like so significantly. And I feel really blessed at this point in my journey that I had attachment issues with substances because the really nice thing about having that problem is it's so obvious, right? So it's like clearly this thing that I'm chasing is not giving me what I'm looking for, and the delusion aspect of it is especially when I actually started to try to stop, it becomes so clear. And then in that process, it's like really easy to start feeling, well, what is the felt sense of being in delusion experience like? Right. And because of that, then like as I've gotten away from substances and found other areas I like to attach to in life, um, I can notice that deceptive quality. Uh, I don't know, maybe that's a story in my head that I can do it like easier because of those experiences, but I feel like I can. And so I wonder, how does someone begin to have that recognition when it's things that are like socially acceptable or even socially held up, like there's definitely in our society like need for personal power, an addiction to money, an addiction to busyness or workaholism. Like these things are really looked at as virtuous in our society. And so I wonder how somebody might come to realize their own struggle there, the own sense of their delusion through recovery practice.
It's an awesome question. And I'll just answer from my side some thoughts, and then I'd love to hear from anyone else who would like to answer this. But I think what I was getting at kind of quietly was thinking about why we're here, because this isn't an ordinary place to be. And many times, well, I'll just say, I've been here before when people who do make the wrong turn come through the double doors. They don't stay very long. Like if they even, like a lot of times people jet before the prayers are over because they're really fucking weird too. It's just like there's a lot of them. They're beautiful. We know that we see the beauty in them. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it is strange, and it isn't anything that for Christian norm, right? It's okay. But let's say they get through the prayers, but then they start looking at the walls and they're like, what is happening here? Uh, um, it's just, it could overwhelm. I think there's cognitive overwhelm. for a lot of people. And I've seen them get up and walk out, literally walk out during the prayers, then sit, make it white knuckle it through the prayers, and then start looking at the art and go, "No, not in Kansas. I gotta go." And then if that doesn't get them, then the crazy wisdom teacher strikes. And then it's like, bye. But for some of us, this is kind of the last stop at the end of the universe, right? Nothing else worked. So what was it that wasn't working out there? What was that pain? What brought you here and got you to take refuge? Why do you stay? What is it giving you? Because even if you're not, it's just to start naming it, to start naming those things. And then looking at that dissatisfaction. And we're all betrayed. The world out there fails us in some way. People die. That's not right. We lose our relationships, we lose our homes, we lose jobs. Nothing's permanent, and that's pretty scary. And Buddhism, if you're sitting here for any length of time, isn't like, super happy, like it's all going to work out, but it is kind of, but not in a traditional way. So those are just some of my thoughts, which are rambling. But if anybody else would like to respond to that question,
I
it was
have
a great
mine.
discussion.
I have a benefit because I have the mic. So it's funny. I was sharing my reflections on a book that Lama suggested I read, and how it's kind of unique to Americans to be filled with self-loathing. He said that when someone tried to interpret an American's reflections on their self-loathing to the Dalai Lama, he had a hard time understanding. He just didn't get it. How does that happen? We also live uniquely in a society where they encourage us to be addicted. It's a good thing, right? That's how you make money. You need to have more, and then you have to have more of that, and keep going. And I think what's interesting here is we've come to the realization, and so many people aren't getting there, so they'll continue to wallow in the self-loathing, but we're addressing it, right? That there's no end to the want. We figured that out. We're working on it. So many people aren't, and they're suffering for that reason.
Thank you, Lynn.
So to address Matthew's question, comment about finding, once you get through one addiction, you nailed it, you see what it is clearly, and then you move on. How do you sometimes notice that your behavior is starting to feel familiar, perhaps? And how can you harness that somehow to catch on earlier where you're taking yourself, And I think for me, one thing that's really helped me do that are the vows, honestly, and some other aspects of the teachings that are not totally spelled out in the vows. But those things, vows are very powerful if you actually take them as being powerful when you take them, that if you respect them. And so I just hear the little voices come up sometimes from the vows saying, oh, ethical discipline, how does that fit into this scenario? And so even though I may be driven by some passion or grasping for something, sometimes I get an alarm that goes off, and it's from the vows.
That's all. And that's being specific. Right? So you start to get specific, and you can also learn how to identify. It's like using a muscle, working with the Dharma, right? And one of the things in recovery is that we're not past, we sort of sit back, teachings, right? We're asked to engage, view our lives. I'm not saying that's not happening here. We come together specifically to take this sort of active stance of, this is the crap that happened to me this week. This is what it brought up. One, or step up and say no more of this, and so start to work with the experience instead of in more intellectual. These booklets, the Full Recovery and Healing, would be a great place to start the 12-step thing that anyone can work with. Whether you're going to when you're recovering from samsara,
Thank you, Jen. I just wanted to share what I feel that I'm kind of addicted to. And it's not a substance, but I have to ask Charla in our meeting in the dojo earlier, you had a quote, and part of it was it was either wanting this or because I love it. And what was that again? Was it recognition or? And I'll just repeat it so I don't have to go back and forth. It's just the word I'm looking for. Well, I certainly did that.
What part you want? Oh yeah, the potter. This is the quote from Lonnie Virgil from a Nambe Pueblo potter. Has lots of pottery at the Native American Smithsonian and at the Crocker. I don't do my work for recognition. I do it because I love it. I feel blessed to be able to do this work. I believe this blessing comes from my genealogy, from centuries and centuries of living in this sacred land.
Thank you. Okay, so recognition. I've noticed that I have a craving for recognition, kind of in general, but I'm an artist and I have a craving for recognition in my art. And I've gone through periods in my life where chunks of years where I couldn't do my art because of other responsibilities. And I recently went back to making art a year ago. And what I've noticed recently is that I have this craving to get an award. Now, I've received awards, and but I want more, I want one every time. That's not possible. Jurors will choose things that, you just go, seriously, that, so I've been struggling with that and feeling like, well, that's not very Buddhist of me, but I do. But I really enjoyed hearing that quote because even though it seems like I'm making art for the recognition, that's not why I make it. That's kind of another part, that kind of follows. I make it because I love it. It's in my blood. If I didn't do it, it just, and I can't, if I have the time and the ability and I don't do it, it doesn't feel right. So what I'm trying to say is that craving for that award. Now I had my partner's grandkids over a few days ago, and they wanted to see my ribbons.
So I brought the box down and I opened it up and I'm spreading out all my ribbons. And I noticed that the first one I ever received, my first blue ribbon, was way back in 1976, I think, in high school, for the Sacramento Camellia Festival poster contest. And I thought, well, look at this. I've had plenty of recognition, but because I took a chunk of time off, I feel like I need that reassurance again, like I'm still okay, you know? Um, but I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I've had plenty of recognition, but it's like with cravings, you could have all the money or all the sex or all the drugs or whatever, and you still want more. But I'm paying attention to it now. And I'm noticing that I want to have more of a compassionate view of it. Like this woman who got an award at the recent show I was in, and I was her piece. I just thought, what? But she was so happy. You know, it could have been maybe her first award ever, but she was just ecstatic. And I thought, you know, I should be so happy for her. You know, and I just felt like, wow, I'm not being a very good Buddhist right now, you know, because of my craving, and the craving causes suffering. And I think with any addiction, it's that craving that causes the suffering. So if you have a thing that you think is, oh, it's fine, it's not an addiction, I'm not hurting myself physically, but it's causing suffering, then you're pretty sure that's an addiction. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for your, and that's how it's done. Absolutely amazing. And you're so courageous. Thank you. I was actually going to do an exercise where I was going to pass a basket and say, okay, everybody just secretly like practice confessing one thing. And we would read it anonymously and kind of guess who you are. No, I'm just kidding. Huh? Wait, I'm not done. How am I? No, but that was absolutely fantastic because you not only took us through the first and second step, right? Kind of recognizing the truth of suffering and then admitting that you had it. But and also showing a lot of the shame and regret that we feel. Like we start to then, not only do you have that shitty feeling, but then all the judgment that goes around it is like, oh my God, and then I'm never going to be good. I'm just never going to make it to the end of this path, ever. And then also recognizing in this perceived self, right? Right. The equal Dharmas or what, you know, like we should be happy, should all over ourselves. Be happy for others. Ultimately, what joy can bring us, but you know, oneself joy. We just walked through it. You unpacked a big suitcase there, and I so appreciate it. Yeah.
My turn.
Andrew, it's your
Hi.
joy.
Hi, thanks for your talk. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Andrew, wait, I think maybe you need to be unmuted.
No, I'm unmuted. Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me now? Hello? Hello? It's not working.
Okay, I think we can hear you now. Andrew, can you go ahead and talk? And for a minute, we're trying to adjust the sound.
Test, test, test.
That's it. We're good.
Hello, hello. Now, do you hear me? Oh, okay, cool. So let's see, what was I going to talk about? So yeah, thank you. This is a very stimulating talk and it's bringing up a lot of thoughts for me. Um, I've worked a lot with people with addiction, professionally and personally, and I've really often thought a lot about the parallels between um, recovery and refuge, and so this is very in alignment with kind of a lot of things I've been thinking about. You know, I was thinking about like the people who come to temple, like you were talking about, and they're out the door fairly quickly. People who come to a 12-step meeting and then don't stay, like that initial kind of when I refer people to 12-step, so many of them don't want to go, and it takes them sometimes weeks or maybe even months, but then there's some moment where it just clicks for them and they stay and they get so much out of it. And I think it's a letting go of that ego on some level and opening up to others and letting them be a part of your life. And I think that's something that we have as Sangha as well. Like um, more that we're trying to find our refuge in our own, whatever we're doing, whatever we're thinking, we fail inevitably. The ego, the mind, the misperceived self always is going to win. And I think that it's like they say in 12 step, you can't bullshit a bullshitter. We need people to um, help us to see where we're stuck, be it a guru or a friend, a family member, a Sangha member. So yeah, I think it's powerful. And I think, with recovery, I don't want to sugarcoat it. There is something about, like, there's this diving board analogy, like where you go farther down when you're in addiction, but you have the potential because you can't deny how bad off you are, that you can rise up farther than you were before. And so some of the people I've known in recovery are some of the most wise and humble people that I know. And so it can become a gift in that way, that like you're saying, we're not that different. Those of us who don't self-identify as being in recovery, we're not that different because we all have our compulsions, our addictions, whether they be substances or not, the clinging, the grasping that we're doing. Um, it takes a certain level of courage to admit that and let other people see it and be okay with that. So I mean, that's more of a statement. I guess the question I would have for you is, that shift that people have where I don't want to be there, I don't want to be there, and then I want to be there. What do you make of that? Like, what do you think is going on that allows for that shift to occur?
Gosh, there was so much that you said, so much there. First, I agree that we need the group. I know I'm not answering it. I'm buying time.
Mhm.
But we do need the group. We are mirrors for each other. It's like, Rinpoche talks about the potatoes in a pot, where we're sort of like helping clean the other potatoes when we're in boil, and then also stripping the skin off of each other to test each other, and certainly, and he often also says that, it's very convenient to be, the world is much more manageable if you're off in a cave somewhere quiet, being in the chaos of it and confronted with our issues is what's really going to lead us to wake up. So just kind of piggybacking on everything that you said, Andrew. And then that where the switch flips. I don't know. I think I don't really have an answer, but I can say so many times in the meetings, people say they'll often just their opening sentence to their share will be, "I didn't want to come tonight, but I'm really glad I did." There's a lot of resistance. We're very stubborn. We're deep in our stuff, right? We're deep in our issues. And the tendency is to want to isolate. And then because it's hard to change. And so there's a certain amount of friction. But then if we can kind of like get used to these sort of like almost like two minds, you got that used car salesperson in your head going, "Hey, you don't need to do this. You deserve to go to dinner tonight. Don't go to the meeting." But if you can just kind of go, "Yes, dear," and then get to the meeting, ultimately, right? It's like wisdom mind is driving. That's nice sometimes. Then you can see the benefit of that, of having gotten there. I don't know. Yeah.
Thanks for your talk today. It was really thought inspiring, and so I think that the shift happens when you realize that the 12-step or program stuff is a solution to your problems. And I think that before, the solution is like to just get loaded and to just try to blot out everything. And it is a solution. If you have a lot of traumatic stuff that happens to you, that's a solution for a while. And so, but it takes a while to realize that, and it's the same way with Dharma. We come here and we hear all this stuff and we hear all this content. And at some point you realize, hey, this is a solution to a lot of the suffering that I'm having. And it's the same way with recovery. It takes a while to realize, hey, this could reduce my suffering. The problem is it's not instant. And with addiction, there's like an instant solution. And you need to turn the ship. They always talk about how this huge ocean liner takes a while to turn. But I think once it clicks, and once you realize that there are tools that I can use to deal with the suffering that I'm having, it's like magical. So thanks.
Ellen has her hand up.
Thanks for your talk, Jen. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I appreciate it. And I've always heard good things about the recovery program and the sessions. And I think if I wasn't addicted to my own story about time management and spare time and commute time, that I definitely would have attended by now. I guess what strikes me is the significant dichotomy that you present between those sessions and sessions in the Gompa. And I wonder how we can bring qualities that you're experiencing that you think are beneficial that happen in those meetings into our discussions in the Gompa. Why do we not share more, be more vulnerable, take the advice and try to apply it more personally? I mean, I don't know exactly what it is, but I guess I wonder, like, why can't we take some of that model and try to shift the experiences of the Sunday talks and the other things we do in the Gompa to have some of that same benefit?
Great. Yeah. I mean, then I feel like this is exactly what I wanted to happen, is just to start a conversation, and say, what can we do? And I don't really know. But I do invite everybody to come to the meetings, and that you don't, I mean, just share your own, just like Susan did today. Just, it's that simple, and then we can look at, I'm sure we'll have more discussions as a group and a Sangha meeting and admin, where we can we can kind of start to think about this. Thanks.
Hey, Ellen, going back to that and going back to what Jen said, do you all remember when we had the day where it was Matthew and Susan and Bradley, and y'all had like a little trio up here, and you talked, each of you, about your experience of choosing to go on retreat, being on retreat, and then coming off of retreat? Why don't we do that in little thirds and say, Autumn and Susan and I'm Kim, why don't y'all get up there and say, okay, I'm picking on you. You can, don't run. You can just say no in your head. Why don't you say, you know, this is how I got here. This is why I stay. This is what Buddhism brings to me. This is how it affects my daily life, or doesn't, or whatever. We could come up with some questions, because I think we've had these small conversations with each other, but I think you just hit upon it. If we had those larger shares and conversations here, that would change the gompa every so often. And I'm still casting about for a topic for July. So thank you, Jen. I might have hit upon it. Maybe I ask myself and somebody else and say, let's have a little trio and talk about those main things. Because I think, I mean, I know Bradley and I have talked about like our backgrounds to getting here are similar and yet different, and we each have this one same scar that we see each other and we're like, did you hear that? I heard that. Okay. So I just think that that would bring kind of what you're thinking, and then maybe help bridging over the gompa to the dojo and dojo to the gompa. Just my
Yeah,
thought.
Cheryl, I think you're right. And I hear a lot of people, I mean, this is my experience, but I hear others too say that they like these student Sundays because there is sharing, especially when somebody shares their own story. You know, actually kind of gives me goosebumps to say that. It's just sometimes more personal, these kind of Sundays. So I think there is a real opportunity for us to share with each other and you know, open up and be vulnerable and that sort of thing. Then maybe we don't have quite that same invitation when Rinpoche is there. It feels a little bit more formal and, you know, scripted and such. So yeah, I agree. Good idea.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree that I'm sometimes a little stilted when I'm the student talk, because I should get better about this, but I don't want stuff online because of what I do. So maybe when I speak, we don't record that. Maybe you got to get your butt in here and then, you know, you can listen. Otherwise, no.
I was just going to add that modeling, like what you're talking about, is a way of modeling to other people that aren't as, you know, like like me. It's like, sure, I'll get involved in that. But when you see people doing it a few times, maybe that's one reason people finally join in at the group too, is I see other people do it and they go, oh, now I know how the form is that I can, what I need to do is open my mouth and let it come out, you know, even a little bit. And so having a modeling plan here, I mean, the Shambhala thing on Sundays is kind of perfect to experiment with that radical way of getting people involved in it, you know?
Okay, so I'm gonna go back because each time someone spoke, I had something else to say, so I'm gonna try to remember. But I think when Andrew spoke, he kind of said what I was gonna say about what turns the switch to make people come back is suffering. And sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they're willing to go there, because it can be very painful, especially if you're introverted or private. But if you hit rock bottom, you don't really have a lot of choices. So that could be the switch. So that's that. and then, oh dear, my memory. Oh gosh. Oh. Bradley. Oh, yeah, I meant to say Bradley. See, I got things confused. Not Andrew. Bradley said, yes, thank you. Bradley said something alluding to suffering. Okay. Oh gosh. No, I can't remember. What else came up? You said something. I'm sorry. I'm taking the time. Okay. Oop. Oh. Yeah. Okay, so the other thing was, why do people leave, you know? Maybe it's, seeing a man in robes and everybody doing their, prostrations, you know, that could feel intimidating to speak up to somebody that we hold so dear. And so, uh, yes, in such high regard and respect to have this kind of open discussion. And the other thing, I just wanted to say that it's not just in the recovery groups in the dojo. It's like all the other meetings that we have, we often say, what brought you here? And why did you come back? You know, and people hear other people talk, and then some people don't want to open up, and that's okay. But it encourages people to open up. And I feel a lot easier when I'm talking to you. It's a lot easier for me. I have to admit that. So.
I just wanted to share briefly that I went to a couple recovery meetings a few months back. I think Rinpoche had mentioned off and on throughout the years that I should check it out, and I was highly resistant because I'm like, I don't have a substance problem anymore. I mean, I had some in the past, but there's certainly things that we all struggle with. And then I felt like if I go, is this even going to make sense? Because it's not about a substance. It's more like things that are going on in my mind. But what I found when I was there is people were sharing all sorts of things, substance related and non-substance related. I mean, there was even somebody sharing about being addicted to spirituality at one point. Like literally everything. And Susan's example was so good as well. And I think that helps bridge the gap at all, because there was a lot of, I guess, compassion from others with substance use for me and my suffering. Because I thought, well, they're not going to have compassion for me because it's not a substance, you know? So it was a really cool experience like that. So
I have to admit, when I go to those meetings and somebody's talking about, you know, they got cirrhosis of the liver, they don't know how much, I mean, all these horrible, horrible things. And then I share and say, well, I have too many shoes. I feel silly. So that stops me. I feel comparatively that I'm being a whiner, maybe, you know what I mean? So I was also thinking what we were talking about earlier, the reason why people don't stick around. We're not used in this culture, in our society, we are not used to getting real, right? Having to talk real, especially with strangers. And there's a lot of people that when they see that's what's happening here, they're not ready for it.
first I want to say that coming the resistance and how it's overcome is sometimes getting to that zero step where you have that moment of like you've hit bottom, and you just can't take it anymore. And like Rinpoche says, this shit's got to stop. It's a turning point. It's really, it's the same. It's very much pronunciation. And you just go, I don't really care what it takes. At that point, you have no pride left, and you're desperate. And desperation is very activating. It's what gets us to make a change. And so we say, I'll do whatever it takes, including going to these stupid meetings and sharing about my shoes. But you know what? We judge ourselves, right? And our whole culture says, stop being a whiner. You think that's a problem? That's a first world problem. Just think about the horrible, hateful things this is the negative self-talk that we do. And there may be some people that think things like that who are there, but they're probably going at themselves mostly. It's a safe space. We don't judge. We don't, except for ourselves, mostly.
Omo araya pazayana indi Om araya pazana indi Om